Great. Well, Lana, I think everyone enjoyed it. And can you just tell us a little bit about how you first came about doing these videos, and just tell us about the difference between the video, what we've just seen tonight, and what we saw 6 months ago?
Well, okay, in the 1990s. Hello? Yeah, okay. In the 1990s, we wanted to try experimenting with video cameras and digital shooting. I came from always making films in 16 millimeter, so this was something very new to try. And Max had a video camera, so we decided to experiment. And I thought, well, I'll just call up my artist friends and ask if we could just go and do kind of casual, impromptu interviews. And I mean, art is what I know, so we did that, but it wasn't meant to be kind of a film. We're just kind of experimenting, and I always love to know what the artists have to say about their work and the process and so on. Anyway, that's what happened. So it has a very casual quality to it. And Max was experimenting quite a bit with the movements of the cameras or whatever. Anyway, so that's what happened. And we left it pretty much all these years, except we did some rough kind of assemblage with a few of the artists then, and then left it aside. And about a year or so ago, I looked through the footage and thought there were some really wonderful things that the artists spoke about, and the content was really interesting. And so decided to put together as a film, and Christina was interested in showing it at Guildhall. So I edited a film of 9 artists altogether, and some of them were not included then because the sequence on Nathan, for some technical reasons, it didn't quite work. And then Li Lan, the Chinese-American artist, I couldn't locate her to ask her permission to use the footage. And finally, I decided just go ahead and do it. And then Howard Kanovitz actually was a film that I made of him in 2007, as you saw in the film. So it was much later. And I did a half-hour film on Howard, but then I asked Howard's widow, Carolyn, whether I could use some segments from the film that I did in 2007 to include in this whole body of artists, a moment in time. And so that's the difference between the 9 artist version and this expanded version of 12 artists.
And can you tell us a little bit about the difference between when you first started creating these videos and the technology that exists today in making videos?
Yeah, it was a lot of fun coming across a very small Steadicam. Originally, Steadicams were very bulky. Well, they still are, actually. So you can't, I mean, with the little Steadicam, you can go right down to the ground and bring it up and over your shoulder, and it's almost like choreography. And it was a lot of fun, but I overused it in this piece here. I just went crazy. But it was the first thing I did, so... But now, as technology has improved, they still haven't got a really decent sort of handheld Steadicam like they used to, but they've got all those aeroplane things that fly around with cameras on, and that's kind of exciting. You know.
So technology is making lots of strides.
Well, as we all know, you can make a whole movie on an iPhone. An old phone, too.
Mm-hmm. Nathan, this is the first time you're seeing yourself on the large screen like
Unfortunately, yes, I know.
And so what was
Thank God for the loss of memory, right?
what was your first impression of seeing yourself at that time?
Today, you mean?
Seeing yourself on screen.
As I said, and I'm glad I didn't remember everything I used to say, right? But it was nice, it was okay. Yeah, it was very well done. I was actually surprised that it came out as well, and it was nice, yeah.
Can anyone talk about the difference between their studios here and the studios that they've had in the city or elsewhere where they've worked, and how that's changed their work? You were in your older studio when you were photographed in it. Elizabeth, you were not in your big studio. Is it the same one?
I think so.
Okay, the
Yes.
larger edition.
It's been added on to, in my case maybe, but it's the same place as far as I know.
Larger work. Okay.
I can say something about that in my industry, which is that originally we had to, when you wanted to edit a film, you had to go to an edit facility, and it would be about 3 or 4 floors with hundreds of pieces of machinery and all kinds. You would have a cut that you had already produced at home, but it was an enormous experience putting a film together then. And now, of course, I came out here because the computer came along and gave me the opportunity to cut at home, you know, very easily without all that stuff, and a lot cheaper too.
The difference, how many of you are out here full-time? Now, April, you're out here full-time pretty much? So
Yeah,
has
and
that changed
Yeah,
your...
that's a gigantic difference for me. I mean, in 1995, we were still commuting back and forth to the city. By that, I mean, like, we go back for the school year and spend, New York time from the fall to the spring and then come back out, although we spent longer and longer and longer periods of time here, and then in 2004, we kind of made a break for it and ended up being out here full time. And it's enormously different, but also the city, what attracted me to the city has changed so much. To me, and I hate to sound like, old complaining and old fogey-ish, but the city feels so corporate to me. It feels like a big, gigantic shopping mall, and I feel there's like, for me, there's more spiritual integrity out here.
Nathan?
I finally had the balls to move out here full-time about 3 months ago. But I've been coming back and forth since the 60s. But I never had the courage to say, well, I'm giving it up. I finally did, and it's wonderful. I'm still adjusting, but it's really wonderful being out here, it's obviously,
It's a beautiful area. Long winter.
Well, I just went, I've been in the city 3 times in the last 3 months, which is kind of insane, and I love the city. But I can't believe that I said I can't wait to get out. I mean, it was just, for the first time in my life, I said, all right, I'm staying here.
Do you feel that your psyche is changing?
I don't have a psyche. I just changed. I learned how to, not to be afraid to relax for a moment, I mean, and it takes a lot of courage, say, okay, I'm relaxed. Because you kind of don't get relaxed because somebody's chasing you, kind of. So yes, it's great. I'm being adjusted.
Elizabeth, in your studio, you have a great opportunity and all the technology and where you can create works on a larger scale. Has that given you a certain freedom?
Well, I have 2 branches. I have my own modeled work, which is in plaster or wax, but I've also worked with a welder because I am not a welder myself. So that's the kind of idea that I've done in the studio, part-time, because he's not available all the time, but I've worked with 2 marvelous people over the last 40 years, may I say. And then I go to the Polish Talix foundry for my own work. So I live on a triangle. I don't know that it's given me that much freedom. I mean, it's a wonderful place to be, that's true. And I remember coming here when I was 14 years old with my father, they were trying to rent a house, and I knew that I loved the place, Long Island, from that time on. So, it's like coming home in a way.
Wonderful. But Elizabeth, you were born in France, right? And
I was back here 2 weeks later, Lana. I had 2 Gemini parents. They don't sit still.
you had a Chilean father.
I had a Chilean father and a Puritan mother, shall we say. So I'm a mix of 2 extremes.
I think that we've all had the wonderful opportunity of being out here and meeting such amazing people and artists. Is there anyone in particular, an artist or an individual that you've met who you really felt has had a profound influence on your life? Does anyone want to take that? Max? Yes. Lana, sure.
But Penny Baker, who's actually here, who's my mentor and gave me my film career, and he's out here a lot in Sag Harbor with his wife, Chris, and so I just want to acknowledge my gratefulness for putting me into the film business.
Some truly amazing films, absolutely, absolutely.
No, I came out here in 1973, and I had the great opportunity to meet de Kooning. I was friends of a friend of his, and I remember sort of hanging out, if you like, with him in the studios and things like that, and talking to him. And that was pretty pretty amazing for me. You know. Not that I'm a painter or.
That's all right.
Larry Rivers brought me out here. You know, I stayed in his house, and between him and John Chamberlain, they were the two guys that actually formed my understanding of what goes on or doesn't go on, and how it goes on, and where it goes on. So those guys were, in my life, were kind of giants. You know. So though they were very different, and I describe him as Larry, the brilliant intellectual, and John, the organic intellectual. They were kind of from different parts of the country, from different kind of way of looking at things. You know, though it was easier for me to relate to Larry, you know, being that he you know, gender, you know, I'm Jewish, he was Jewish. And John, to me, was just kind of an alien being, you know, someone redneck from the Midwest. But we bonded, you know, and the way we bonded was we both agreed that he thought the Jews had horns first, and I thought that Christians had horns first. And we decided to have a draw. And from that point on, we understood that people think differently as to where they come from, but art and a way of thinking somehow connects you, and then you forget everything else. So that's the two people that I got.
April?
No one in particular. I mean, my life feels fluid. I still have a lot of friends in New York, and I have a lot of friends here, and everybody and there's so many people that I know, admire, and like, and it just all kind of mixes. And I'm like just in my own spin cycle, I guess. And it's a lucky one.
Absolutely.
I know so many
Absolutely.
fantastic people. I wouldn't know where to begin.
I would have to agree with you. I think that having had the opportunity, having been at Guildhall since 1987, I've worked with 9 of the 12 artists that were in this film. I actually curated exhibitions of and got to know so many of them, call some of them friends, and really have enjoyed the experience all along. So we're in a community so filled with the most amazing people and amazing opportunities. So it really is a wonderful blessing to be here. If any of you were not artists, what profession would you be? Would you be an activist, a politician, a mayor of Sag Harbor?
You're so funny. You mean like fantasy or?
Sure.
I've always wanted to pretend to be a.
I think that you've done such an amazing job of being part of the community and being an activist of the community and supporting so much of what we need out here from every level, political, social, emotional, dealing with people, animals, the environment, everything. So we thank you very much for that. We really do. No, we truly do. So I think she should be. Should she be the mayor of Sag Harbor?
Excuse me, but I have to say we have a fantastic mayor here. I mean, she's really a great mayor.
We'll find another position for you then. Elizabeth, what would you have been?
Sanitation.
Probably an actor or an architect.
Wonderful. Anyone else?
I suppose, I don't know, a yard sale. You name it.
I'll probably be a dishwasher. And I'll tell you how that came about, okay? You wanted me to tell a John Chamberlain story. So John, who was an icon, and I was much younger, and one day John and Carlos Anduzzi, who used to work for, we were all hanging out in Spring Street, and they decided in the evening to come up to my studio on Varick and Spring, right? Now, for a person that was a little younger and a sculptor, to have John visit your studio was not easy. You didn't want him there because you don't know what he was going to say, and he can destroy you, right? You never work again, right? So anyway, we come up, and we get along, and he liked what I did, and we discussed it, and then we left. And a few days he called me, and he said, listen, why don't you come visit me in Sarasota? So, of course, I was flattered, and I'm saying, but do I have enough courage to go and stay with John? He was not an easy person to hang out with, right? He was a giant, in my mind anyhow. So finally I got enough courage and I said, sure, I'll come. So I get in the plane and I go over there. And I come into the studio, and his studio was like a hangar, it was huge, kind of on the outskirts of Sarasota. And he used to build those, foam beds, right? So there's this huge foam bed in the middle of the studio, and he was just fixing the area where he lives. And there's a kitchen and a little bedroom and a television. So I put my stuff on the bed, and we kind of talk, and the evening comes around, we go out to dinner, and we went out drinking, we went to a few music places, and we get back, and I fall asleep on the bed, and he falls asleep. So I get up in the morning, and I go to the kitchen, and there are a few dishes in the kitchen, right? And I like to wash dishes in the morning, if they're in the sink. It's kind of a Zen kind of an experience. You wash your hands, and I've always done it. So I go to start washing the dishes, and all of a sudden I hear a yell from the bedroom. What the fuck do you think you're doing? And I'm looking at him and said, well, I'm washing the dishes. He says, don't wash the dishes, I wash the dishes. I said, what do you mean you wash the dishes? I like to wash the dishes. I said, well, there were just a few I like to wash. So we got to a discussion as to why do we like to wash the dishes. Because not many men admit that they like to wash the dishes, right? So we agreed that it was a Zen cleansing kind of quality, and you're doing something functional in the morning because you got nothing. So we decided that being an artist and being a dishwasher is almost the same. So that's what we got. So I would be a dishwasher if I wasn't an artist.
I think we've got a few good restaurants out here that might want to take you up on that. I wanted to ask both Lana and Max, what advice would you give contemporary filmmakers who want to make documentary films, and especially people who want to make documentary films about artists?
Well, first of all, I think nowadays there's the technology is so advanced. Anybody can actually take an iPhone, even go and film. And out here and in the Hamptons, that we have so much talent here, and you can just go and make a film. And when I was young, I started my first film on Andy Warhol in 1972. I never made a film before, and I just went out and did it. And I would advise anybody who has an urge or a passion, just go ahead and do it. And also, I think it's important for us filmmakers to capture the work, the process, the involvement of art that's being done, and in the process, get to know the artists themselves a bit. And someday when we're all gone, that will always stay and for the future generations, and I think that's really important. And I think anybody who wants to go out there to make more films on individual artists where you can really get into in-depth of the artists, and not, my film was just a moment in time and we were doing experimentation, but I think it's important to capture these films.
I think that I would recommend highly to whoever wants to do this kind of work to be very patient. We made this little, whatever you call it, film 20 years ago, right? 21, 20
some years ago.
Yeah. I'm currently working on a follow-up to that film 20 years later, which has taken me so far 4 years, and I expect to go for another 2 years. Whatever the technology, it just takes time. And that's definitely what I would recommend to anybody who's... It's like writing a book, I suppose, or painting a painting. It just takes time.
Max, can you tell us a little bit about the Hamptons Bohemia, the film? Because I think that's important.
I think it's a follow-up to what we did, Lana and I did together. And it's basically, you know, I read the book by Helen Harrison, and it's the story of this social history of artists and writers who came out here since 1880. And I thought, well, that's perfect for a film. And so I started interviewing people and shooting the landscape and, you know, trying to marry the book with Helen's subject matter. And I'm still working at it. Loving it, by the way, because all I have to do is roll out of bed and go to work.
Well, it's going to be a wonderful book. It is a wonderful book, and I'm sure it will be a wonderful film, and we look forward to seeing that here. Any final words from artists on the panel where they'd like to say something before we... No final words of wisdom. Well,
Too much already.
I think, thank you so much. We want to thank Lana, we want to thank Max, we want to thank Matt, who did a wonderful, wonderful job, and all the artists here on the panel. Thank you so much.